At this time, I'll call our meeting to order. We want to welcome tonight our Scout Pack 716 from Stony Point. We appreciate them being here this evening. Also, we appreciate everyone that has come out tonight to be a part of our meeting. At this time, I'll ask Commissioner Legg if he will lead us in our invocation, and it'll be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. But our scouts are going to move up to the microphone and lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance after the invocation. If you will, all please rise.
Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for this fine day. We also thank you for the opportunity to meet here this evening to do the town's business, that you guide us in the right direction and we do what's best for the town and the citizens of our town. We ask that you bless and watch over our military who are serving around the world, and also for our first responders, that you keep them safe. We thank you for all the people who are here tonight. We ask you to bless them. We ask you to watch over the scouts and let them grow up to be mature young men and women. We'll never fail to give you the praise. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Our scouts will please come to the microphone. And if you'll remain standing up there after you lead us in the pledge. Come on up. We have a large group tonight. I want to thank the parents for being here this evening. I appreciate you bringing your young men and young lady to be a part of our meeting. Come on out. You can all come out. We'll make room for all of you so that way you can all be heard. And if you'll remain there after we finish so I can bring you down your special certificate, okay? All righty.
Scout salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if you'll remain right there, I'm going to come down, have a certificate. Now, the audience, you may have a seat. So the reason that our young men are here and young lady are here this evening is because part of their moving to the next level is they have to learn a little bit more about citizenship, learn about the community, and they have to attend a public meeting. So they came this evening, they got here at 6 o'clock, and they have asked excellent questions. Just know that they've asked me anything and everything, and some of them had tough questions I had to answer. We appreciate you coming. We appreciate the parents for being here this evening, and we appreciate Mr. Jentz, the Cub Scout leader. All right, first we have Brennan Campbell. Here you go. This verifies that not only have you been here tonight, they recognize you for doing a great job and being a scout. Carson Hackett. Ask your dad, he knows you well. Colin McCloskey.
I look for the rookies on.
Hunter Collier. Thank you, sir. Hunter Fisher. Thank you, sir. Jackson Gonzalez. Thank you, sir. Joshua Moon.
How did you know?
Is that right? Canoe. Canoe? Okay. Thank you, sir. Kristen Sturgis. Say it for me. Seeger. I was trying to make you make it. Kirsten, thank you. And thank you for being very nice about my mistake in not being a young lady before. This is our young lady that's a member of our Boy Scout troop, which is now Scouts. They're no longer Boy Scouts.
Got it.
Mark Holmgren. Here you go. I hope you get some supper tonight. Matthew Dooney. Nicholas Reyes. Sebastian Terry. Thank you. Sebastian Wilkins.
Doobity dobbity.
Tyler Dixon. Everybody got one?
Ding, 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 ding. I want
All right, I want to thank you for being here this evening. And I'd like to also thank your parents that are in the military because of your service. Thank you so much. At this time, do we have any additions or deletions to our agenda?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve our agenda. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Next, we have a presentation from the Point in Time Homeless Count Survey scheduled, and this is by Mr. Tony Gardner. If you'll come to the microphone, please, sir, and we welcome you to Town of Hope Mills.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, my name is Antonio Gardner, and I work for CDRC, and we're sponsoring the Hope for NC, which is a program working with Hurricane Florence survivors. We're been charged with canvassing the Hope Mills area. Maybe you've seen some of us walk around. We have the blue shirts on that young lady has there, and we have our name badges, so we've already contacted the police department, letting them know we were here. 2 points. We'll get to the point in time because they all work together. So the Hope for NC, again, we go out door to door and we're talking to the residents of Hope Mills, just asking them how they survived through the hurricane and if they need any additional services, mental health services. If they didn't get funding from FEMA or any other pot of money, there's monies available through the state to kind of help them get repairs and get whatever services that they need. So in conjunction with working the Hope for NC project, I'm also on the COC board in Fayetteville. Is it too low? Okay. Yes, ma'am. So which brings me to the point in time, which is the annual count of the homeless population. So again, along with the Hope for NC, our team will go out with assistance from the VFW Post 10630. We're going to go out and we're going to canvass the area and count the number of homeless people in this area. So what I'd like to ask for is that if there are any pockets that the police may have recognized or any other concerned citizen of homeless population, we'd want to know so we can get those members counted as well. This is the last week of January, and I think we're going to do it January 30th. Around 9 o'clock. So it'll be 3 hours that we're out canvassing the Hope Mills area. Again, if there are any pockets that's been recognized, we'd like to know that so that we can get them counted and get those numbers turned into the COC board. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I brought brochures and information on the point in time contact. So thank you.
Okay, we'll leave those with our town clerk. Then we can make sure that she has that for her. The town clerk is Miss Starling right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you.
Next, I have a proclamation. This is Black History Month proclamation. Whereas the 2019 theme for National Black History Month is Black Migrations, it emphasizes the movement of people of African descent to new destinations and subsequently to new social realities. African American migration patterns included relocation from southern farms to southern cities, from the south to the northeast, midwest, and west, from the Caribbean to U.S. cities, as well as to migrant labor farms, and the immigration of noted African Americans to Africa and to European cities, such as Paris and London, after the end of World War I and World War II. Whereas such migrations resulted in a more diverse and stratified interracial and intra-racial urban population amid a changing social milieu, such as the rise of the Garvey movement in New York, Detroit, and New Orleans, the emergence of both black industrial workers and black entrepreneurs, the growing number and variety of urban churches and new religions, new music forms like ragtime, blues, and jazz, white backlash as in the Red Summer of 1919, the blossoming of visual and literary arts as in New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Paris in the 1910s and 1920s. Whereas the theme Black Migrations equally lends itself to the exploration of the century's later decades from spatial and social perspectives with attention to new African Americans, because the burgeoning African and Caribbean population in the U.S. Northern African Americans return to the South, racial suburbanization and inner-city hyper-ghettoization, health and environment, civil rights and protest activism, electoral policies, mass incarcerations, and dynamic cultural products. Whereas when Carter G. Woodson established Negro History Week in 1926, he realized the importance of providing a theme to focus the attention of the public. The intention has never been to dictate or limit the exploration of the Black experience, but to bring to the public's attention important developments that merit emphasis. And whereas since 1976, Black history has been celebrated the entire month of February, and whereas African Americans have made significant contributions as leaders at the highest levels of military, business, education, law, government, the arts, and sports and religion. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Hope Mills, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of February Black History Month, and urge all of our citizens and our community to give full regard to the past and continuing service of African Americans in our city, our state, and our nation. Next, we have National Wear Red Day Proclamation. Whereas National Wear Red Day is observed annually on the first Friday in February, whereas heart disease and stroke kill 1 in 3 women, women can take action to protect their heart health and reduce heart disease by preventing and controlling risk factors for the disease, such as smoking, high blood pressure, overweight, obesity, physical inactivity, age, and various others. Whereas women's health remains a priority for families, communities, and governments, whereas GoRedForWomen.org is building awareness of women's heart disease risk and empowering them to reduce and prevent heart disease. Whereas women need to make heart health a priority for themselves, their families, and take action to improve their health. Now, therefore, I, Jackie Warner, Mayor of the Town of Hope Mills, do hereby proclaim Friday, February the 1st, 2019, as Wear Red Day in the Town of Hope Mills, and encourage all citizens to work together to promote and improve the health of women and increase the understanding of heart disease. Next, we have public hearings. The first public hearing is case P18-16, rezoning of 2.56 plus or minus acres from R6A residential and CD conservancy district to CP planned commercial or to more restrictive zoning district, located at the northwest quadrant of the intersection of Service Road 1118, Parkton Road, and North Carolina 59, South Main Street, south of Rockfish Creek. Submitted by David McMillan, owner, and Lori S. Epler on behalf of Larry King and Associates. Applicant has modified the request to rezone 95.72 plus or minus acres to mixed-use development, CZ, conditional zoning. And I'll turn it over to Mr. McLaughlin.
Hello, Madam Mayor, fellow distinguished commissioners. As stated, this is case P18-16, which is a rezoning request. As you can see here, the existing property or the subject property is hashed with the red arrow pointing to it. This map gives you the existing zoning. As you can see, there's a very, very well-established residential community on all sides of this development. You have R6A. Just to the south, you have a mobile home neighborhood. You have R10 properties, which are R75. You do have scattered commercial, but there's a very large residential presence in this area. And as such, there you'll see a variety of different land uses. Everything you see in yellow is residential, but you do see some scattered commercial manufactured properties in the area as well. This is an aerial photograph. Subject properties outlined in blue. This is a map of existing soils. This map shows you the location of existing water and sewer. As you can see, most of the established water and sewers to the north, there doesn't appear to be any direct connection of water sewer directly to the subject property, which would trigger the PWC agreement as well. These are your flood zone. Flood zone, as you see, the body of water to the north. This is an actual site plan. As you can see, Hope Mills Road runs along the northern portion of the property, but Parkton Road does bisect it. So what you're going to have is you're going to have single-family residential on both sides of Parkton Road, and then you'll have one commercial out parcel that would essentially make this a mixed-use development. Another map I put together for you guys, I think this is in your packet as well. I wanted you guys to see this so you can see the relationship between the property that is located inside of town of Hope Mills and the portion of it that is in our MIA. The only portion that is under consideration from you guys tonight is the 2.56 acres in purple. You can see the town limits in yellow. So ultimately, the remaining 93.16 acres will be heard by Cumberland County Commissioners on February 18th. So although this initial development is 95.72 acres, the only portion that's under consideration from you guys tonight is that 2.56 acre portion inside the town limits. And these are your site photographs. This is a view on Parkton Road of the subject property. This is a northern view along Parkton Road. As you can see, the gas station that is located further down on the right. It's another east view of Parkton Road. South view along Parkton Road. This is a view along South Main Street of vacant land along of the subject property. This is a northern view along South Main. This is an east view along South Main. This is a southern view along South Main subject properties on the right side of the screen. And I'll keep the site plan up. One of these two I'll keep up while I'm finalizing the presentation. As stated earlier, the only portion of the development under consideration by the Board of Commissioners this evening is the 2.56 acre portion in the South Town limits, which is also a wetland area zone under CD Conservancy District regulations. I do not anticipate this portion of that development to be developed. It's probably going to stay as open space. As it relates to frontage, the site fronts about 930 feet along South Main and approximately 2,460 feet along Parkton Road. What's also taking place in this area, North Carolina Department of Transportation is proposing to widen South Main Street in this area to a four-lane roadway, and it's also proposing to realign Parkton Road through this development. So the portion of the development you see Parkton Road going through, that does not represent the latest realignment of Parkton Road from the NCDOT side, but the developer is aware of that. I don't know exactly what the timetable or timeline is of the DOT portion, but I do know that's going to affect that property with the realignment of Parkton Road through the development. In terms of the current proposal, the applicant proposes to construct a mixed-use development that will consist of 99 single-family residences, 2.54 acres of commercial, and 48.20 acres of open space. And like I said, what you see here is that the commercial area proposed along the west side of Parkton Road with open space. You'll have open space located in various areas throughout the entire development. And as stated earlier, the large portion of the open space areas within the proposed development are wetlands and not developable. As it relates to adopted plan compliance, the 2030 growth plan calls for urban and urban fringe at this location. Southwest Cumberland land use plan calls for open space, suburban residential, mixed use development, and medium density mixed use housing. So this development is in compliance with those plans and studies. As you can see in your packet, I did list the negotiated conditions that were outlined in the application. As this is a conditional zoning request, the site plan becomes part of this approval. And what you see is the proposed uses are everything that's listed on the site plan, with the 2.52 acres of commercial, the 45 acres of single family, and the 48.20 acres of open space. The density will be locked in at 95.72 acres. You see your setbacks here, and your parking signs and landscape requirements will have to meet ordinance regulations. Town staff is recommending approval, and you can also see in your packet the motion by Cumberland County Joint Planning Board on December 18th recommending approval as well. I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. McLaughlin?
No, ma'am.
Any questions? Okay, this time then we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this zoning change? Is there anyone that would like to speak against this zoning change? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. All right, Mr. McLaughlin, now do we have any questions for Mr. McLaughlin at this time?
I do, ma'am.
Okay.
Is this road change, Parkton Road, does that gonna have anything to do with the new bypass rerouting in that area?
You talking about not 295 coming through?
Yes, sir.
Not to my knowledge. I think this part is tied to the widening of South Main. There are several projects going on in this area. You have the Golfview widening, you have the Rockfish Road widening, you have 295 coming through. But this specific project is tied to a widening from the interchange up to I think Cameron. I'm not sure how far it goes up, but it's encompassing the realignment of Parkton Road for that widening of South Main in this area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Not. Do we have any action at this time?
Madam Mayor, I'd like
Yes,
to make a motion in case P18-16 that we approve the rezoning from R6A residential, R10 residential, and CD Conservancy District to mixed use development / CZ conditional zoning, subject to the conditions within the submitted packet application, and find this recommendation to be consistent with the Southwest Cumberland Land Use Plan, which calls for open space, suburban residential, mixed-use development, and medium-density mixed-use housing. The mixed-use development designation allows for A1 residential as shown on the site plan, and further finding approval of the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the district requested will require public utilities to be extended to an area not currently served, and the submitted site plan shows a density in harmony with the surrounding existing zoning and land uses while preserving areas not suitable for development.
Okay.
Perfect.
Have a motion. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed.
And also, what I'll do is I'll make the update for the vote from the commissioners in Cumberland County on the 18th part of the manager's report for the next hearing that does occur after that date.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have public hearing for case P18-44. This is revision and amendment to the Hope Mills subdivision ordinance, amending Article 4 Development Improvement and Design Standards, Section 86A-403, Minimum Lot Standards, subsection F, lots intended for commercial industrial uses, and Section 86A-405, sidewalks and walkways, subsection A, sidewalks and walkways required, and revision and amendment to the Hope Mills zoning ordinance, amending Article 15 Planned Districts, Section 102A-1502, detailed site plan specifications, and Section 102A-1503, site plan review, and updating the table of contents as appropriate. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. McLaughlin.
This is a pretty self-explanatory text amendment. If you recall, back in October of last year, I presented some issues to you guys that are addressing two different aspects of our subdivision ordinance. The cross-lateral access is us responding to information coming to us from small businesses in Hope Mills that feel that they're negatively impacted by the median that was put down Hope Mills Road. So what cross-lateral access does is it requires any new commercial and industrial properties that are developed, that are vacant, that they actually run a connection to the adjacent property so that it allows for future cross access. What that ultimately means is if I'm coming down Hope Mills Road, hopefully with these cross access points being created, it reduces the number of direct contact points to Hope Mills Road, so I can kind of get up and down Hope Mills Road to some more of these businesses without having to come down and make some U-turns and things of that nature to get to the other side. The portion that's tied to sidewalks, that was us responding to impacts that are negatively targeting small businesses. So in this ordinance, you'll have a series of thresholds in place where sidewalks are not required if it's an existing building that we're taking through a site plan approval process that doesn't require or doesn't propose any new construction, or if it's the utilization of an existing building that we're not anticipating more than 50% of renovations. So under those scenarios, sidewalks will not be required. And that's basically it. This is something that I think you guys responded to on some negative trends that I had noticed. We sent it to the Cumberland County Joint Planning Board. They recommended approval as well.
Any questions for Chancellor?
Mr. McLaughlin, if I may, Mayor, I'm sorry. Is that going to be in the ordinance where it can be a way to get around putting sidewalks in when we should have them there?
Not to my knowledge. The reason why we made these two changes for the sidewalks very specific in that they only apply to a commercial development utilizing an existing building where they're not doing construction. I do think the area targeting is really with our residential subdivisions, because I do think that the initial push that the board had to require sidewalks on both sides was related to questions and concerns we had about sidewalks being put in residential areas. This does not allow anyone to find a loophole to get around that. If I do notice that there are some things that maybe appearing to slip through some cracks, I'll be the first one to bring it back to you, because that's a trend that I'd actually track as well, just like I was tracking some of the trends related to small businesses being negatively impacted.
Yeah, we worked a long time to get
Yeah.
sidewalks on both sides of the streets in residential neighborhoods.
Yes, that's correct.
I think some of the town staff at that time was more interested in the commercial, and I don't mind it, but I just want to make sure we're not going backwards on the residential areas.
I agree.
I know some of the developers don't like it, but in my opinion, it's better to make a walkable community, and it can save us a lot of trouble. And I think they're very nice.
Now, and add on what you're doing, one thing that we are doing in commercial areas we're getting even that much more aggressive on our grant funding requests for sidewalks in areas where we do think that there may be an offset of sidewalks not being pushed in areas where you have commercial. If we can offset that by applying for more grants, then that will help create that balance.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
In the motion, it says that the amendment is not consistent with the Southwest Land Use Plan, in that one of the adopted goals and objectives of the plan strives to increase pedestrian mobility to schools, parks, and downtown area and pedestrian safety, while providing sidewalks on both sides of the thoroughways and boulevards. Is this being triggered from the Surge Trampoline Park? Is this
No.
what is this?
You mean what's triggering this sidewalk ordinance?
This sidewalk to be changed? Is this because of the pre-existing shopping centers that did not have sidewalks?
No, ma'am. I would actually, in reference to Surge came in after their requirements came in before this ordinance was moving forward. What I noticed was over a year and a half, when we do site plan approvals, My focus with this request was primarily for small businesses, like you have an existing small building where a beauty salon is trying to move forward, where we have, and these are real cases that actually we did approve. I think there was 3 beauty salons, a few churches, a couple small stores where when they realized that this approval triggered them having to put in commercial sidewalks along Rockfish Road 5 feet wide, it just killed the project. The project just simply didn't move forward. Surge ironically came around the same time that we were trying to get this ordinance approved, but they never actually raised any issues with this at the time that I actually got this approved from you guys. They came in after the fact, after they heard about it, trying to get us to entertain a motion of doing a variance to be alleviated from the requirements, but they were not considered to be the driving force behind my push to get this ordinance adopted. Now, with respect to what you're saying about the non-compliance with Southwest Plan, I do think when you're talking about doing sidewalks, we will find some nuances, because typically the Southwest Plan, we're talking about developing of land. So if you're talking about removing sidewalks, there are very specific sections that talk about pedestrian connectivity and things of that nature. So there are going to be a few nuances where it doesn't hit every single aspect of what we're doing. But when I presented this to the Cumberland County Joint Planning Board, they did agree that we should move forward with this and change the Southwest Plan to reflect what this ordinance is actually.
And it actually shows where a motion was made
Yeah.
to amend
Yeah.
the comprehensive land use plan to reflect
That's
the changes.
exactly the portion that we're talking about. Yeah. So this did come up in terms of compliance, but what they ultimately said when they realized that there were some areas that didn't comply, that they felt that in light of why we're doing this, and we should change the plan as opposed to not supporting the text amendment.
Okay, any other comments or concerns? Since this is a public hearing,
Yes.
if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this revision, if you come to the microphone at this time. If there's anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this revision, if you would come to the microphone at this time. Seeing none, do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. All right, so now do we have action?
I don't know who's gonna read this one, but this is
It's a long one. You got it.
I just consulted with the county, like, do they have to read this into the record? Somebody. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this, by the way. In case P18-44, the Town of Hope Mills Board of Commissioners votes to approve the portion of the text amendment to the Hope Mills subdivision and zoning ordinance concerning lateral access, finding it is consistent with the adoption comprehensive plan designated as the 2030 Growth Vision Plan, specifically including Policy Area 4, a balanced transportation system, and Policy Area 9, compatible commercial development. The proposed amendment is also generally consistent with the Southwest Cumberland Land Use Plan 2014, in that one of the adopted goals and objectives of the plan strives to decrease travel times and improve the mobility of all residents while accommodating the movement of goods and services without congestion, and further find that approval of the amendment is reasonable in the public interest because the amendment, if approved, would increase shared access among commercial and industrial developments, thus decreasing the number of direct access points to roads. The Cumberland County Joint Planning Board also recommends approval of the text amendment to the Hope Mill subdivision and zoning ordinance concerning sidewalks, and find that A, this recommendation is an amendment to the adopted Southwest Cumberland Use Plan 2014, and the Board of Commissioners should not require an additional request or application for amendment to said ordinance for this request. B, the following change in conditions was considered in amending the zoning ordinance to meet the development needs of the community, although proposed amendment is not consistent with the Southwest Cumberland Use Plan 2014. And that one of the adopted goals and objectives of the plan strives to increase pedestrian mobility to schools, parks, and downtown areas, and pedestrian safety while providing sidewalks on both sides of the thoroughfares and boulevards. The proposed amendment is consistent with the goals of encouraging the reuse of vacant retail and industrial sites. C, and this text amendment is reasonable and in the public interest because the amendment will file for easier development of existing vacant non-residential structures with minimal renovation, thus promoting incentives that foster the revitalization and reuse of existing commercial buildings. This proposed text amendment would not cause any changes to the Southwest Cumberland Use Plan map.
Okay, we have our motion. Would anybody like that repeated? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Dan, is it necessary that we have to read this every time, or can we make that part of our approval process that that's in there? Miss Lynn, you might know something about that.
Well, I wrote it, so my preference would be for you to read it.
I think it's best practice to read it into the record so that it's contained in the record, the actual wording. Rather
The next
than
one
trying
I have to
find
do,
a
I'm-
document that goes with
Next
it.
one I have to do, I'm just gonna send it to her. Can you shorten it or brief it up for us? Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat.
Oh, you're welcome.
All righty.
Sound like you were getting out of breath there.
Next on our agenda is annexation 2018-03, Deaver Circle Apartments, lots 13 through 22. Beginning an existing half-inch iron rod on the eastern right-of-way margin of Deaver Circle, also being the southwest corner of lot number 13, and running thence with said right-of-way margin number 4 degrees 1602 east and 1,000.86 feet to an existing 1 1/2 inch pinched iron pipe, thence leaving said right-of-way margin and running within the northern line of lot 22 as recorded in Plat Book 22, page 71 of the Cumberland County Registry. South 80 degrees 43 east, 128.28 feet to an existing 1-inch iron pipe, also being the northeastern corner of lot 22, thence with the eastern line of lot 22 to an existing 1/2 inch rebar, thence continuing with the eastern line of lots 21 through 13 as recorded in Plat Book 22. Page 71 to an existing 1/2 inch bar, also being the southeast corner of lot 13, thence with the southern line of lot 13 to the point of beginning. Said tract of land contains 2.95 acres more or less, and this is continuous. This is a contiguous annexation. And I'll turn it over to Mr. McLaughlin
All right.
again.
In terms of background, Town Hope Mills received this annexation petition for 2.95 acres of land associated with Phase 2 of the existing Deaver Circle development. The proposal contemplates the construction of 10 units under the R6 district, as staff has made a formal request to Cumberland County Planning Department to begin the initial zoning process to designate this development under R6 zoning. This classification does match the zoning of the existing Phase 1 of this development, and 5-foot sidewalks are required along Deaver Circle in compliance with Town Hope Mills subdivision ordinance regulations. You also have in your packets the memo that we typically do with annexations from our plan review staff, recommending approval from all departments. And I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that you may have.
Mr. McLaughlin, if I can
Yeah, go ahead.
make an amendment to one of the items in the staff memo. The fire department was recommending a bulb turnaround. That is not going to be possible. So they have indicated that installing sprinkler systems in the 5 units on the dead end portion of the road meets the code. So because they won't be able to provide the turnaround, the bulb turnaround, they can do the sprinklers. And the fire department says that still meets the code. So they have worked that out prior to this public hearing.
Any questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Okay, since this is a public hearing, is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this annexation? Is there anyone that'd like to speak opposed to this? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close public hearing?
So be it.
Okay, so back to Mr. McLaughlin. Do you have any other questions for Mr. McLaughlin?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
are these a continuation of the summer?
Yeah, that's Divas.
That's what they're going to look like? Okay.
Yeah. And I think you have a site plan showing the layout in your packet.
And because of the stormwater issue at the base of Deaver Street and Rockfish, that is not going to cause a...
This would have to meet stormwater regs on site for this development. Same thing happened with the Diva Circle Phase 1. So regardless of whatever those issues are, Seaway and Collier area, this development will have to meet its stormwater regs on site.
Any other questions, concerns?
Madam Mayor, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay.
Annexation 2018-03. Make the motion to approve Deaver Circle Apartments, Lot 13 through 22, beginning at an existing 1/2 iron rod on the eastern right-of-way margin of Deaver Circle Road, also being the northwestern corner of Lot 13 and running thence with said right-of-way margin feet, north 4 degrees 16 feet to an existing 1 1/2 pinched iron pipe, thence leaving said right-of-way margin and running with northern line of Lot 22 is recorded in Plat Book 22, page 71 of the Cumberland County Registry. At south 80 degrees feet to an existing 1 iron pipe, also being the northwest corner of Lot 22, thence the eastern line of Lot 22, south 3 degrees, 100.73 feet to an existing 1/2 rebar, thence continuing with the eastern line of lots 21 through 13 as recorded in Plat Book 22, page 71, south 4 degrees, 899.58 feet to an existing 1/2 rebar, also being the southeastern corner of Lot 13, thence with the southern line of Lot 13, north 80 degrees, 129.01 feet to the point of beginning a said tract of land containing 2.95 acres, more or less. This is a continuous annexation.
Madam Mayor, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
can you amend that to cover the sprinkler system to make sure that's covered properly? Is that
With the
proper?
sprinkler system recommendation from the fire department.
Thank you. Is that good?
That's perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have public comments, and at this time, we have Elizabeth Cooper.
Elizabeth Cooper, 4413 Goldenrod Court, Parkton, North Carolina, 28371. However, I am a Hope Mills resident. When I first made my personal commitment to attend and speak at the following Board of Commission meetings, I made it clear what my reasons were. The reason I come to these meetings is because my mama always told me, you can't complain about something unless you're willing to do something about it. I come as a concerned citizen of Hope Mills, and it is my right to come here. I come to highlight what you, the commissioners, are doing and point out how it affects our community on the record, because not all of our citizens can make these meetings, but they can view them on the website after the fact. Sometimes I indicate at what points during the meeting the items I am addressing occurred at previous meetings. People who can't be here care about this community as much or more than most of you on the board. I hope to be their voice, at least for those who let me. I am so pleased to see that the Parks and Rec Department is getting back on its feet, and I know we will soon enjoy some of their amazing programs. Golfview Blackbridge Road, per the last manager's report, Even the DOT is not ready to consider integrating a half-thought idea of a walking path that is not even a half mile from an already existing walking path into their plans for the expansion of Gulfview and Blackbridge Road. It's rather short-sighted of this board to be spending resources to develop the walking path to nowhere. I have one other thing, and I meant to bring it up last time. The investigator that is being chosen to investigate the board, you, the board, are interviewing that investigator. And to me, that appears inappropriate. And I want to say something before the results come out, because I don't want to say that, I don't want anybody to say that, oh, I didn't like the results, so that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up now because it doesn't seem appropriate that the people who are being investigated are the ones choosing the investigator. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda. If there's anything you'd like moved after I read this, we can move it to new business. Consideration of the approval of the minutes from the January 7th, 2019 regular meeting. Consideration of memorandum of understanding between the town and the Jernigan family. If the donated property is developed as a park or playground, it will be named in the honor of Mrs. Jernigan's mother, Bonnie Ray Dittman. Consideration of approval of Resolution 2019-03, accepting U.S. military's law enforcement support, LESS, 1033 program donation, a Temp T cargo trailer valued at $4,500, and a 2009 AM General Humvee valued at $4,500 at no cost to the town. Consideration of accepting budget amendment 2019-05 in the amount of $13,100 and its reimbursement to the town for post-Florence mosquito abatement awarded by Coleman County Health Department with funds received from the state. Consideration of accepting budget amendment 2019-06 in the amount of $34,425. The Johnson Street Sidewalk Project received $34,435.60, an 80-20 grant from North Carolina DOT. Consideration of accepting budget amendment 2019-07 in the amount of $1,000. Impact Community Outreach has donated $1,000 to the town to be used to help with the renovations of the Parks and Rec Community Center. Consideration of authorization of town manager to execute a contract in the amount of $15,000 with T2 Contracting Jet Rodding to begin a cycle of storm drain maintenance that will continue annually based on results. The $15,000 is currently budgeted. Consideration and discussion of ordinance amendment 2019-02 related to the Ed Herring Park hours requested by Police Department. Consideration of approval of ADA sidewalks and replacement of dugouts at Brower Park. Total cost $19,980 and is included in the current budget. Consideration of approval of Resolution 2019-02 declaring surplus 10 broken non-working tasers and donating them to FTCC's BLET program. Consideration and authorization of town manager to execute a contract with Morganson Mitigation in the amount of $7,300 for the year 2 monitoring of Hope Mills Lake wetland and water quality per proposal dated January 14, 2019. Consideration to accept the December 2018 financial statements. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion to approve. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. The next thing is under old business, and that is consideration and discussion of the signed ordinance amendment. And I'll ask Mr. McLaughlin to come back to the microphone again.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
before Chancellor speaks about the signed ordinance, I'm not sure if it's appropriate or not, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. I'd like to pull the signed ordinance amendment from tonight's discussion, consideration, and ask the board to discuss this on a separate workshop.
Is that appropriate to do that at this time, or should that have been done at the beginning under the approval of the agenda?
Technically, it probably should have been done at the beginning, but I think it's the board's decision.
Okay. Okay, we have a request that we move this to another time. Do you have a time that you want to move that to, or do you have a recommendation of what you want done?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any say-so in it?
Yes, ma'am. The board has to approve that. Has to be voted on to be pulled. So I guess that would be the first thing, would be to have a vote on whether or not it is to be pulled from this
That was my
agenda.
motion, Mayor.
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, especially in my head, about different things on the ordinance that's unclear. And I think it would be an idea if we had a workshop so everybody is on the same page and we have an understanding of what we're trying to do here. Make sure we're not making mistakes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
We have discussed this in workshops and 3 different times now. We've had 2 public hearings. One was at Planning Board. And we recommended that you redo it and bring it to us today. We've gone over it, and the way you have it written now, it would appease not only us, but also Mr. Riddle and some of the others that were here. If there's anything specific that they don't like, I mean, to me, we've spent enough time on it, and we need to move forward. If we find out later there's something in here that is not compatible or we're having problems with, we can always revisit it. But we spent too much time and too much money, and you've researched it, and you're the staff person involved. You know more about it than any of us do, and I just don't think we should table. I think we should go ahead and accept it.
Madam Mayor, we have a motion on the
We also
floor.
have discussion, sir. Would anyone else like to comment in reference to this?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I agree
Yes,
with
sir. Okay.
Mr. Bell, that
The,
Commissioner
the, re,
Bellflower.
here's the main reason why. Given the gravity of the signed ordinance, I don't think we're there yet. I just don't.
What part do you not agree with?
I don't think we're there from the last meeting that we had on the signed ordinance. I think there's still some work to be done. And I don't think we shouldn't put a time limit on something that we have an opportunity to balance and get right. And if we need another workshop, which I think we do, to completely address everything that came from this last meeting was very informative. We spent 2 hours in here and listened to just about every developer that had any concern, and that was the first time that I had heard that type of feedback in this form. And we owe it to our citizens, we owe it to our businesses to get this right and to iron it out. And that's why I think it needs to be on a separate workshop, and when we go at it again. We're close, but we're just not there.
Question for Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
know that having dealt with this prior years, once this is not, it's out there, what do we have as far as being able to approve signs, or as I know that there was a moratorium, so to speak, on signs when we went through these changes years ago. I don't know the exact year that was, but I just remember there were some issues about the staff being able to do their job as far as the code enforcements because of the ordinance not being approved. Is there anything to that, or we just stand with the current ordinance?
If nothing happens this evening, then you're basically with the ordinance as if nothing had been changed. So we'd
would be
be
the
dealing with
old
the 30
ordinance.
foot heights, things of that nature, 100 square feet in terms of allowable size and things of that nature. So what it would do is just basically take us back to the current ordinance in its current state. What it would also do is it would hamper staff's ability to address what we consider to be some very serious issues with signs bolted to light poles and signs that are not made by professional businesses. So even though there appears to be a few pieces of this that aren't acceptable. I would like to point out that the parts that are overwhelmingly in agreement from everybody, we still can't move forward with those pieces either until we do get something adopted. So, but I'll follow any direction that we do. I do get from the
And
board.
it still has to go back to the joint
Yes,
planning.
because you're making a pretty substantial change. We do from what the board, the planning board ultimately told us to reconsider. The fact that we're making changes to that, this does have to go back to planning board. So you're looking at about a 2.5 month process from the time that we do come up with an official decision from this board.
All right, so at this time, we have a motion on the floor. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, in addition, you would have to do a public hearing after that.
Okay, another public hearing. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and that motion is that we pull this and set another time and date to revisit this. So all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, so it's a 4-1. So we.
And if I could also respectfully ask, is there any specific area that I'm supposed to bring back for this work session so that it makes it a little bit more productive? Because what happens is, if I'm not able to bring back any new language for consideration, then the work session just becomes me gathering information. So
Could
if
we
you,
send it to you in writing? Our concerns?
I just need something that kind of gives me some specific instructions.
Can we find out, I mean, now, I mean, what's,
And
Yeah,
also,
so that'd
I
be some,
guess if
and I
you,
would like to send mine in writing if you don't mind.
that's fine.
Okay.
Are you guys setting the hearing at the work
Yeah,
session
the
now,
work-
or?
work session.
That's the next thing's the date. What's next Monday look like?
I won't be here.
Okay.
Next Monday's Parks and Rec meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Next Tuesday then.
I won't be here next week.
Oh, you won't be here at all. Okay. Week after that.
We have a board meeting. No, yes, we do. don't we?
Following is the 4th, and then we have the 5th on the.
So you want to do a workshop prior to the board meeting? Do we have something on calendar for 6 o'clock that evening? 5:30? Huh?
Festival committee, that's it.
Okay.
So, what
This
time
week?
does The festival committee meets at 6.
23rd, 24th?
I'll be out.
This week?
I'll be out tomorrow and Thursday.
Well, Friday we have the flooding meeting at 1. You want to do it after that?
This Friday.
This Friday? We have the reps coming in for the Sean Wayne Collier flooding. Is that right? At 1,
At 1 o'clock.
and we can do it. We can do it after that.
I can.
I just think that the sooner we resolve this, Chancellor, you can move forward. I'll tell you what my concerns are now, and I think we're at the ground signs. I think that's where we are. I think everything else may be discussed. I have an issue with small business signs, especially those that open up. I think it's a week. I think it should be longer.
You mean the banners?
The banners. I think
Okay.
it should be longer. I'll tell you now, I do. I mean, if I was a small business owner and I was trying to advertise and build a customer base, I surely couldn't do it in a week. I couldn't do it in 2 weeks. That's just me now. I get a little passionate sometimes, so.
Is it possible for you to clarify what you were meaning regarding the ground signs?
I think we need to look at the pole signs versus the monument signs. And I know the difference between the two terms is one word: height. And that's where we are.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Pole
I-
signs, monument
Mr.
signs.
Coughlin, is this the first time that the pole signs have come up? I don't remember us discussing them before.
To my understanding, at the work session, I was asked to explain what a tiered approach would be. And I explained that it would be an approach that you would allow for the sign heights to gradually increase as you set back the location of the sign. But with respect to triggers, just like the initial request for this text amendment called for the signs to be lowered, if you're going to lower a sign drastically, you have to lower the square footage. So with this tiered approach, as the sign heights would gradually increase, the sign square footages would actually increase. So what you have in this ordinance is, even though this reiteration after the work session called for increase in signs, the height was allowed to increase back to 20 feet, but you're still dealing with a net 10-foot reduction from the current ordinance that allows 30 feet. Although the sign sizes and square footages are gradually going up, you still have a net reduction because the current ordinance allows for a 100 square foot sign. This ordinance allows for 75 square feet. So I do think that this approach is a middle ground because you get the increased heights and sizes that the developers want, but you do get a reduction in size and square footage that the board wants. I think the contention is on pole signs, but that I don't recall that being the focus, or at least the direction that I received at the work session.
Well, just from my own clarification then, since we are operating under the old ordinance, so anybody who comes in now we will have to deal with them under the old ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'm concerned about the pole signs and what it would do to development that's coming into our town. And in order for us to keep residential tax base at a lower limit, it's going to be important that we draw these commercial businesses in. I don't want to sign an ordinance that's going to run business out of town or to prevent builders from doing subdivisions.
Yep.
But I do want one that it's agreeable, that it's neat, looks good. Someone told me today a monument sign could be on 224s. I agree, but somehow we need to have some language that will control the appearance of a monument sign.
The housing.
We actually do have that language in the current draft, where there's language that specifically states that the sign has to be done by a professional sign company. There's also language in this current ordinance that states that if the sign is in disrepair or it looks like it's not being kept up, I can cite you and actually give you a duration of time to bring it into compliance. But again, those are the aspects of the ordinance that we cannot enforce if we do not allow this to move forward.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Now, Chancellor, you and I spoke on the phone, and I specifically said the sign, I could go to the sign company having a sign made, and it would be a professional sign made, but I could nail it to 2 2x4s and put it in the ground, and I would necessarily be in compliance because we do not have anything stating the housing of the sign.
From my understanding of that conversation, it appeared that the majority of your concerns were pole signs. I do not recall that being the focus of the negative backlash that we received from businesses or the direction that I received from the board. But if the board's wishes is to have another work session, all I'm asking for is specific details on what you guys want me to focus on so I can bring you some language.
Well, my question also would be that undoubtedly there's some pole sign in our town somebody doesn't like. So if that's the case, then why don't we identify those signs? Because if you look at the majority of the pole signs, they are professionally done, and they are done by businesses that is their trademark. So if there is one that's not appropriate, then why don't we address that one, and instead of causing so much issue.
That I agree with as well. One thing that does present a challenge, we can regulate size, we can regulate height, we can regulate materials, but it's very challenging to regulate taste and to regulate up here language. So if I'm dealing with someone that does not like pole signs, the only avenue I can do is just to take that out. But what I'm dealing with here is when we get direction from you guys, we have to make the nuts and bolts work where it's time to make this legislation make sense. So if we're talking about applying increase of height for signs at 20 feet, and we're mandating that they can only be ground signs and no pole signs, just like you can have a company that could actually get a professional sign and nail it to a 2x4, I can have a standalone individual business that could come in with a 20-foot tall monument sign.
And
So
we spoke about that also. because we used Mr. Riddle's example of the neighborhood market being a good-sized monument sign. So we talked about that being 110 square feet, where you wanted to take it down to 60, and I can understand why developers would find that unreasonable in size.
Yes.
And so the compromise would be to stay with monument signs, but find reasonable square footage for those monument size, not necessarily height, but square footage, based on how many occupants maybe are in the shopping center. If you said it, and we used the example of that one, and we said, let's just say there's 10, and that's 110 square feet they get for 10 occupants. If they have an additional occupant in there, 11 instead of 10, then there's an additional square footage added. If they only have space for 9, then you take away that square footage. But you use that as your standard.
That language is already in there as well. That language actually is in the original ordinance, where the ordinance does provide distinctions that allow for different increases in square footages when you have a business or a shopping center that has between 2 businesses and 5. There's a different allocation that you have between 5 and 10. Above 10 businesses, you're allowed 2 signs and higher square footages. But when you were having that conversation with me, one thing I did reiterate to you is that, from my understanding from the posts I heard from the developers, that their concerns with this ordinance were not just shopping center signs. I think Mr. Riddle's most recent project is a Chick-fil-A, which is an individual commercial property. So what I was getting at is, the reason why we had to revisit pole signs is that I think this works perfectly fine, conditioning it to ground signs or monument signs for shopping centers, because the language is in place that allows for that shopping center to get a little bit higher in size as more tenants come in. But if we don't put information in there that's a catch-all that addresses individually commercial developed properties, you're going to have a situation where, just like the example you put, you're going to have a rogue person in any situation. But
Okay, can I interject here?
Yeah.
Normally, what would happen would be these conversations would be shared with the entire board.
Yes.
So what we're dealing with now is a conversation that was had with just you.
That's
and
correct.
Normally what would happen and what should happen would be that would have been centered around our town manager, who then would have given us the information based on the concerns. So my concern now is that we're unduly putting you under pressure here, and we're not all privileged to the information. So if we are in fact going to revisit this, then let's revisit this with
That's
all
great.
the information
Thanks.
for everybody, and then we don't have to have this bantering back and forth.
Well, and Madam Mayor, I was asking for explanation before coming to this meeting,
Well,
how it was
we do
reading.
that, but we do that as a board. That's the way we work things as a board.
But we were pulling it.
Well, but we didn't know that you were pulling it until you got here and pulled it, so that was probably decided prior to the board meeting also. So I guess if we would not probably need some individual dates as far as when would be a appropriate time for this, as far as a additional workshop and work session, and it would have to have duly timed so that we can also send this special notice out so that others that might want to come to this workshop can attend, since it would be like a special meeting.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct? Okay. So can we wait to make this decision until we can get everybody's calendars in place? And hopefully it can be soon. I can tell you right now that with all the things that we got coming up with committee meetings and other things, that we don't need to rush this into a work session till we get everything together. And again, all the information that is privileged to one should be privileged to all. So can we have a consensus to wait till we can get a calendar out with everything on it that we can pick like we normally do, as far as picking a date?
That's fine with me, Mayor. Like I said earlier, I mean, in the last workshop that we had, the tier approach is the common ground. It really is. We're almost there. We really are. It's not so much where we are today, Mayor. It's where we go in the future with this sign ordinance. And I think we owe it to the citizens of our community and to the businesses to get it right. I just do. I'm passionate about it.
Okay, well, we've agreed to that, so
Yeah.
can we agree now to set that time
Just do
at
it.
such time that's convenient to everyone in place so that we could have a calendar sent to us? Would that be appropriate? Like we normally do have a calendar with what's upcoming? Because I know there's lots of meetings taking place that.
We can send out a calendar for the balance of January and for February, first thing tomorrow.
Okay, thank you then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Did y'all
Yes, sir.
vote? I think
Yeah, they
Approved,
voted to
yeah.
pull
Okay.
it. That was
Alright, got
after
it.
conversation,
Okay,
after
got
we
it.
voted to
We're good.
pull it.
I do want
Okay.
to clarify one thing. I
Okay.
mentioned earlier that technically it should have been brought up at the adoption, but under the rules, Rule 13B2, you can amend the agenda even after it's adopted. So I just want to clarify that too.
Okay, thank you. All right, under new business, consideration and discussion of policy to keep citizen committee applications on file for 1 year as requested by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Yes, sir?
Simply that.
Okay.
Not really much to say
yeah,
about it, other
right.
than, I actually talked to Town Manager Adams and, our Deputy Clerk, Jane Starling, and, I think that is what we're doing once it was brought to staff's attention, that we will be,
Right.
maintaining those applications for a period
1
of 1
year.
year.
1 year, okay. Well, and I don't see that's an issue because normally we don't have any leftovers. We haven't had that happen, I don't think but once or twice, so this will be good to keep them. Do we need to put that in form of a motion? Or is it okay just by consensus?
I think either way is really fine.
Okay, why don't we have a motion then to keep the citizens committee applications on file for 1 year? Who would,
So moved.
okay, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Did you vote?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next we have consideration, discussion of documents, governing committee and commission appointment procedures. And there is a collection of papers by your seat. So I guess no one took credit for this, so who, I guess Ms. Starling, are you gonna give us some information?
Yes, as I was looking through the documentation for the different documents we had that govern the appointment process, I found that we had multiple documents stored in different places with different levels of authority that were there was nothing to indicate which one was supposed to be used. The most recent one was your rules of procedure, which did not really address any of the actual working process. It was kind of just about what the state requires, which is already required by the state, so it really didn't give me instruction on what I was to do. So I provided in the agenda packet copies of all of those and some old documents that had instructions. And then I spoke today with Commissioner Larson, who had some suggestions of what to provide to the board. And there is a policy number GB-02 that was in the little additional packet that I put on your dais. And I updated it with the one that I found had a lot of stuff in it saying this was changed and that was changed. I took out everything that's been changed, already been voted on to be changed, because that was just a distraction. And then I went in and did a red line of what the suggestions were. And you have that, looks like this. And additionally, there were some questions about, well, the second thing that comes to my mind is that the commissioner's rules of procedure and/or the ordinance should point us back to this policy if that's what we're going to use as our authority for how we process things. You know, if you don't want to put it, because it's a lot of detail, you might not want to put all that in your rules of procedure, but your rules of procedure should maybe say, see policy GBO2 for process, or something to that effect. Or it could be in the ordinance, which involves making it a law, which is more official and probably not necessary, I think, personally.
Right. And would this not also been more appropriate for this to be brought to the board and the board make the recommendations to you? Because again, we've got one commissioner directing our town clerk to do a task. Questions, yes, but I don't think that that's the intent, is our town manager would have been the one.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
Respectfully, I was aware of this.
Okay.
So,
But would
yeah,
this not have been
it's-
something that should have been
it's-
brought to the board for those recommendations? My understanding in the past is if we make changes in any of these types of documents, that we bring it to the board, and then the board would make those recommendations that they want changes. However,
Madam
we've gone beyond that, so I guess now the question is, has the board had an opportunity to look at this? And are there any questions in reference to this? And do we need a motion to approve these changes, or do we need to further study these changes?
If I may, I
Yes,
think the intent was, we've got 3 policies that are
Right.
inconsistent, and we wanted to bring them to the board. My suggestion was that these be brought forward to the board, for the board to discuss, and I believe Commissioner Larson was,
Right.
has brought suggestions to the board.
Right. Well,
It's
my
for the
understanding
board.
was the most recent change would have been dated, because I know this was changed at some point, because when we were looking at the committees, and it was, should have a recent one, more recent than either of these. And if you'll recall, we did a change when we added the Economic Development Committee. There was a change then, and we removed that committee. We added the Lake Advisory Committee to the group. We changed the number of members. I did not see all of those changes in here, so I do know there was a change made more recent that we were following that year. But these on here, this one I know is the old one, the one that's
The ordinance,
yeah, the ordinance. I know. See that where it's highlighted in here. I know that those.
the only change to the ordinance has been the addition of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay.
This is a proof
Okay.
of what Municode has provided based on the ordinances that were sent in prior to the beginning of, 2018?
Yeah.
For the 10 years prior to that,
Okay.
for the codification.
So the current changes that we would have would not have been sent in the form of the ordinance. It'd just been on the policy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All righty.
And
So
what
are there
we
any
need to do is
questions?
take
Yes.
take the policy and make it consistent with the ordinance, because the ordinance controls over any policy
Right.
we have. And so
Okay.
we just need to decide what rules we want to have in place, and then go from there.
Madam Mayor, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I applaud Commissioner Larson for bringing this to light so the town clerk could could pull this from the files to find out.
I had already brought it to light, sir.
Okay. Anyway, we've got it out
Yeah.
front
She
now.
brought it to light, and then there were recommendations for
Okay.
change.
What I did was just take out the stuff that was no longer in existence, because Jane is new to the town. Maybe that she didn't know that some of those things were no longer, those committees were still here. I didn't make any changes to what was there. I was just limiting some of the stuff that was no longer in existence, so that she could type up a version for the board to see.
Okay.
For the board to look at.
So
Thank you.
what do we need to do now? Is there some questions as far as to move forward with what we have, or is there any talk in reference to these changes that have been, these corrections that have been made? Do we need to approve the corrections?
May I ask one more
Yes.
thing? The term of the office of the chair of each board shall be 1 year. I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels on here. I would,
I
yeah, I would think
apologize.
2. I think practice has been 2 years for the full term of their time, and that their own committee votes them into their chair. I don't know how the rest of you all feel, but that's what they've been doing.
I concur with that.
Do you want to make a decision on this tonight, or do you want to look at it and there are two more items that we discussed that were questioned. The Community Appearance Commission is the title of the Appearance Commission, is the title of the Community Appearance, which some people call committee, but it's always been commission according to the code. And I went back in the minutes as far as 2008, and it was referred to then as the Appearance Commission. And another question was about the Veterans Affairs Commission. I was asked if that was, when that was voted on to make it a commission. And I only have electronic minutes back till 2008, and researching through those, there was mention in 2009 of people being appointed to the Veterans Affairs Commission, so at that point, that's what it was called. So I can't find any record of either one of those ever being called anything other than a commission. So, but if the board has an issue with that and wants to change it, that would involve a ordinance change for the appearance, and the Veterans Affairs is not governed by ordinance, so that would just be a vote to change that. But
I'll say my anticipation when it was brought to my attention that there were inconsistencies in our rules and policies and ordinances is that we would have a discussion, and then I would probably take a look at whatever y'all as the board wanted to do and create a single policy and a single ordinance that fit with what was the will of the board, and then we would bring it for a vote at that point.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think that's where we are too. It's the single policy and the single ordinance. And I think that perhaps Jane should go ahead and prepare both of those in a draft form and bring it back to the board for a vote.
I think the issue was we needed some guidance from the board on what y'all wanted those policies and ordinances to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go through here with the recommendations.
Yeah. And I think the attorney's going to have to be the one to actually draft this. He has to draft anything that's going to become an ordinance.
Well, yeah, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Board of Commissioners, I think that's probably more appropriate. Take these changes, have Dan review them, check everything out, and then bring it back.
Yeah.
If these are the changes
Bring it back.
that the board
If this is
wants,
what the
and
board wants.
that's why I think we need just a little bit of guidance. Are these changes, suggested changes, what the board as a whole wants to see? If so, I can bring back a proposed ordinance at the next meeting.
Am I wrong if I say we only have 2 commissions? Historical?
As
Well,
the
what's the other
ordinance
one?
reads right now, there's the Appearance Commission, but it's been functioning really as a committee. And there's
That's what
also-
it should be, isn't it?
Well, that's up to the board. And then there's the Veterans Affairs. It's actually not contained in the ordinance.
Right.
And then there's the Historic Preservation.
Which is by ordinance.
Right.
Commissions are pretty strong compared to committees, is my understanding.
That's correct.
We went over that in one of the schools of government, the difference in those, and what they can do, what they can't do, what kind of money they can spend, what kind they can't. But the Appearance Committee already has a budget that they're given every year. So I don't know why we would call them a commission instead of a committee, but I may get in trouble for that because I said on that.
believe, if I recall, it's because there's a Coleman County Joint Appearance Commission, and our commission, our committee, has always been a strong part of that. And that's where it came about, was that we became a commission, I don't know how long ago, but I know that that's one of the main reasons was because of the Coleman County Joint Appearance Commission that we are representative on. And we do aid in making other decisions outside of Hope Mills. We have a representative on there. So that's where I think that came from.
I
Madam
don't have
Mayor,
a problem with it either way, just,
Yes.
if I remember correctly, and Miss Jean Clark knows this too, because her and her husband were the first chair of the Veterans Affairs, and it was at that time it was called the Commission, Veterans Affairs Commission. It was established that way, and now that I remember back through the years, that's exactly how it was created. And that recommendation was by former Mayor and Commissioner Edwin Deaver, that the Veterans Affairs Commission, because at that point in time there was a line item and funds were budgeted every year for the commission. I think I'm correct. Yeah. So, off and on through the years, it probably has acted like a commission or a committee, but it was originally a commission, and I believe since it was originally approved that way, it should remain that way. But that's my recommendation, Mayor.
Okay, and that's not governed by the ordinance anyway, so that would just be
Well, if it's
the policy. It would be in the policy, right?
If it's a commission, it should be part of the
Listed,
ordinance because
okay.
it has certain statutory, powers.
Okay.
And you'd
Would
wanna
it
make
be-
sure that it's set up consistent.
Madam Mayor, would it be fair to find out what the difference would be as far as the general statute that would mandate each one of those versus a committee versus a commission? I mean, we have the one for the appearance, because I gave that to you.
Right, and the appearance, if you look at the ordinance on the appearance committee, it looks to me like the section about powers and duties mirrors the statutory language.
Right.
So, essentially, a commission would have those powers and duties to act independently in some things, whereas a commission would be more along the lines of an advisory capacity to the board, and then the board would make those.
Yeah, the only difference I saw was they could spend and then be reimbursed.
Right, yeah, I
As
think,
a commission, they were able to spend their budget and then be reimbursed as far as 168-451.
yeah, I think in 452 is, I think, what sets out the powers and duties, and I think there are some specific things that they do have. I think they have the right to enter property, other things that they wouldn't have the right to do as a commission. But I can.
I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with the way this reads. I was just curious what the difference is between being a commission versus a committee on each one of those. I mean, I know the historic preservation, I mean, I was there when that was voted in. I couldn't find it in the minutes for the other ones, so I was just curious.
If y'all like, I can, at the next meeting, present a list of the differences. It's all statutory. If you look at the statutes on each different commission that the board has the authority to create, it will list what they are permitted to do. But I'm happy to put that together in a single document. And the difference would be that a commission has those powers and authorities and duties, whereas a committee would just be more along the lines of
And
advisory.
really, both commissions have had a budget, and both commissions have had the power to spend money, because Veterans Affairs Commission, theirs was in the ceremonies and things that they do. Memorial Day and the Veterans Day, there was always some, and it wasn't a lot of money given to them, but they did have the authority. And I know that went back to 2007 or 2008, because I served as the liaison during that time, and I know that there was funding. And the Appearance Commission has always had a budget and has been able to come before the board to request money too. So I guess that, so the motion then would be, do we need a motion to give this to you to bring back to us?
I don't need a motion, I can just do that.
Okay, so if you
Madam
bring this
Mayor,
back, yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the town manager to, or the town attorney to go over this policy and come back with proper recommendations.
Okay, so if everyone in favor of that, yes, sir?
That's going to have comparisons between committees and commission.
Yes, that'll work. I'll do that.
Okay,
I think that'd be most helpful, Dan,
okay.
that information when you come back.
All right.
And if we change the ordinance, do we have to have a public hearing for that?
I don't believe you would on that particular one.
Okay, all righty. All right, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Next item on the agenda is consideration and discussion of the Hope Mills Lake Bulkhead project bid opening. 5 bids were received and publicly opened. The current lowest responsible bidder is M&E Contracting Incorporated with a bid of $433,730 plus a bid alternate of $27,216 for centipede sod. Their base bid plus alternate equals $460,946. Okay? So, discussion on this?
Was there some kind of problem why the sod wasn't added into the original bid? Don, do you know anything about that, sir?
We specifically asked the contractor to give us 2 prices on it.
Okay.
That your base bid with seeding, and then because we knew that the cost of sodding was more than what the seed was, we asked them to give that to us as an alternate. So you have a base bid plus an alternate.
Good enough answer.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I agree with the with the sod, and I think that's exactly what needs to go in down there, and not seed. And with that said, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve it.
Where are we gonna get the money from? I guess that's the first question is, we don't have this in our budget, so where's the money coming from?
How long is this good for? How long is this bid good for? Do you know, Don?
Probably 30 days.
Usually 30 days.
30 days.
Most
Probably
bids are
most.
good for 30 days,
30
sir,
days.
because especially right now, with the current economic situations, your material escalations come into play considerably.
I mean, we have a couple of options. We can look to get a loan for it. We could take it out of fund balance. I know that Rachel Cotter, when we have our meeting on the 11th, she's going to talk to you a little bit about our options for the Partif grant. I do not believe that a bulkhead would qualify for any portion of a Partif grant. So
Another meeting.
Madam Mayor, let me make the motion this way then. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the Hope Mills Lake Bulkhead project bid from M&E Contracting with a bid of $433,730 plus a bid alternate of $27,216 for centipede sod. So the base bid will equal $460,946, and then at our next meeting, our finance director will bring us the options of how we're going to pay for it. That's my motion, Mayor.
And I'm sorry, but could we add the 23,000 contingency in there as well?
Yes, plus the 23,000 contingency. Yes.
Thank you.
So that's gonna make it almost, that's gonna make it $483,000. $483,000. And some change.
It's going to be $483,946, and that's the motion.
All All right, we have a motion to accept the bid from M&E Contracting to include also the contingency, which would equal $483,946, and to ask our finance director to come back with ways and means to take care of this cost. All those in favor,
Madam
signify. Yes,
Mayor.
yes, sir.
Got some discussion.
Okay.
Dan, is that, so that obligates us legally at that point to enter into this contract? And if for some reason we don't fund it, of course, we'd be in breach, of course.
Well, yeah, if you don't fund it, you would.
Okay.
And that, I guess, and I'm thankful that Mayor Pro Tem brought that up, that is a concern, because then I don't know what's written in that contract as far as if we accept it, what is the forfeiture? I know we dealt with that when we had the contract that we had signed with the church and parish house, which they let us out of it, but is there a
I mean, aren't we getting the cart
penalty?
before the horse a little bit? Shouldn't we,
Yes.
shouldn't we have the money figured out before we approve this bid?
Probably so, and I would like to review the contract before we enter into it.
Man, right now, there is no contract.
It's just a bid.
Right now, it is just a bid.
We're just approving the bid.
Yes.
We're just approving the bid.
So approving a bid, does that constitute a contract, a meeting of the minds, or not?
That's a
It
good
don't have to be in
question.
writing to be a contract.
And,
That's true, but
and also, if, just to beg your patience on this too, is that $483,000 seems awfully high. And if we accept this bid, then what's going to happen is if we could not accept any of these bids and put it back out for a rebidding. I know we've done that before because the bids were too high. And in this particular case, I believe this is high. I might be wrong, but the length of that bulkhead doesn't seem like it should be that costly. But I'm not a bulkhead builder. I have some familiarity with bulkheads in that I have helped pay for one down at North Myrtle Beach, and I just believe this is high, but
Madam Mayor,
yes, sir.
Can we just ask that the financing be explored and not approve this bid? Because remember, we got some big projects on our sheet, including the public safety building, the parish house, sidewalks we don't have finished yet, and that's just a drop in the bucket there, and that's not even mentioning the golf course development, which we know is gonna be high. But
Is there
can
a
we do it?
time, yeah, is there a timeline on accepting the bid?
There's not one established, ma'am, but typically it's 30 days.
Okay, so we would have 30 days, at which time we could get some information before we accept the bid. Would that be acceptable?
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I'm going
sir.
to comment again.
Okay.
My motion is to accept the bid, and that also would give the direction to the contract and to the funding at the next meeting. That's all we're doing tonight is accepting the bid. Now, I'm going to say something, so please don't take this wrong. We've been looking at this for over a year. This has gone back and forth with Fleming in the design process for over a year. This is tied to the permit of erosion control. So it's not like it just showed up today. We knew this day was coming. We knew that there was going to be a bid come, and we know that the project's got to be started. And here we are in January. And it's probably, and even after we finish this, it's probably going to be a month or two before this starts. So we know we have to do it. There's no question about that. We have the bids, all of them. If we rebid it out again, we're just going to reinvent the wheel. We go forward with it. And at our next meeting, our finance director will bring us options to fund it. That's how I feel.
I agree with the mayor. It seems excessively high. I have built a few bulkhead walls in my lifetime. And when these contractors see the stamp of Hope Mills on the front of it, the price just went up 30% because they're doing it for municipality. And they can't build this stuff for nothing anymore, you know. The water table down there has something to do with it, the final grading and sodding and everything. But even the sod price seems excessively high to me. So,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
would it be feasible, Commissioner Bellflowers, if we, at the next meeting, had our finance director bring back how we'd pay for it and also request terms of the contract so that our attorney can view that all at the same time, with not accepting the bid but asking for more specific terms?
I'm not sure, Dan, but if we don't approve the bid, then that wouldn't be.
Well, because the
there would be
bids
no
that we've
directive
seen in
for a
other
contract.
situations had much more detail than just this.
Because the
One
contract's
option-
going to come from M&E Contracting, right?
Well, one option, I just did a little bit of quick looking into it. A bid can form a contract, because it's offer, acceptance, parties, all the traditional elements of a contract could be met. That said, you could have a bid agreement where the acceptance of the bid and a formal written contract agreed to by both parties is a condition precedent to a contract being formed. And I don't know if we have anything like that in our bid documents at this point, but we could say that we will accept the bid contingent on approval of funding and agreement on written terms of a contract.
I can amend my motion for that, Mayor, contingent on funding approval.
And terms of the agreement.
I can do that.
And terms, because I mean, this isn't really terms. I mean, this is just kind of,
You would
this
want
is
a-
very basic. We're gonna build it, this how much is, but there's no liability, there's no clauses and no signatures or anything like that. So I would want you to review something like that before signing off.
Does that seem?
That would be the process. Right now, all we're bringing to the board is the bid itself. They are not bidding on clauses or contracts. What the companies have done is they have designed and built a bid based on the drawings and specifications that they asked them to make a bid to.
I think what we could do, if we tell them we accept the bid contingent on these things, would that
If
be?
you draft up the language and we'll get it to the
Okay.
the engineering firm that's doing the oversight and the potential contractor.
Okay, so we have a motion.
We're just paying for aesthetics, basically. In Florida, they're taking concrete bags, laying on top of each other, cut a slit in the side. The paper dissipates, and you have a bulkhead. And you could do this for $80,000, but it's all about aesthetics, y'all. So we want it to look nice. You got to pay to look pretty.
Now, then I would have had the boardwalk. Okay, well,
Amen.
so we've got the motion.
$1 million.
Not really. We have our motion on, and I guess, was there any other discussion? Does everyone understand what the motion is?
As long as the town attorney's good with it, I'm good with it.
We haven't asked the town attorney anything.
So you're okay with the motion as we have it?
It does not bind
What's-
us.
What is the motion?
The motion is that we accept this bid based on the fact, on whether or not we can come back with funding for this bid, and that we can verify the contract
Right. I think, yeah, you accept the bid and.
Contingent
but
on-
Any formation of any contract is contingent upon the bid being funded and then a written contract being put in place.
I mean, if I was him, I'd say you guys got in fund balance, award the contract tomorrow.
That may be. But
If I was him. he'd probably have a plausible argument.
What's your suggestion?
My suggestion would be exactly that, to say that we accept the bid, but the formation of any contract is contingent upon a formal written agreement agreed to by both parties, and
That's pretty much
we'll
my
be-
motion.
We'll be funding the project if we agree to it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my motion, Mayor.
All right. So, any other discussion? And are we looking at having something back by our next meeting? And if so, Mr. Holland, are you okay with that, working through all this? Because I know you're gonna have to come up with something. Okay? So, all in favor, signify by, yes, sir?
Just so that you know your time frame, the bid opening was the 11th of January, so you have 30 days from the 11th of January for everything. So the next meeting will pretty much be your
Right.
drop dead date.
Right.
Yeah.
Next
February.
meeting.
That'd be February, what, 4th?
4th.
February 4th.
They had intended to start the work in January.
Sir?
They had intended to start the work in January, right?
They
No.
can't. It will take approximately 6 weeks to get the material because of the preservatives that are being specified. They're not going with just like the pier, it's not going to be an arsenic-based preservative. It's going to be a copper-based preservative, and that takes a little additional time.
So we lower the lake and then the fish start spawning. Is that a problem with wildlife?
That I couldn't tell you,
Fish
sir.
spawn in, April, May, right?
April, May, all depends on the weather. We're going to do our best to keep the levels so that everybody's
Survives.
content. The fish, the geese, the residents. It's
And the eels.
And the eels.
and the eels. It's an interesting balance.
They're gonna have a long way to fall. Let me ask you, is the government shut gonna hamper this process any, Drew? I'll address this to you. Okay.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is discussion and update of the Episcopal Church parsonage and Episcopal Church property as requested by Commissioner Bellflowers.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask Dan for his update on the church heirs.
Right, so as y'all may recall, the issue with the church property was that we were given the deed, but the original deed back in the 1800s had a reverter clause that said if the Episcopal Church property itself was ever not used as a church, it would revert back to the heirs, which meant that we never really got valid title to it, because as soon as it transferred away from the church, I think that reverter clause was triggered and it went back to the heirs. We've had some long discussions with the heirs on trying to resolve that. We have resolved it with 5 of the 6 heirs, where we did a survey, an appraisal, and they donated the property to the town, their share of the property to the town, and they would be able to get the tax credit for that donation. So we now own 5/6, I guess, of the building. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to convince the 6th heir, who's sort of the holdout, to follow suit. But to date, he's not indicated that he's willing to do so. So I'm looking into, what it means to have a 5/6 share of that. Certainly it means that we can enter the building. It means that we can do repairs, all that type of stuff. And I'm hoping to resolve the issue with the 6th heir going forward. So we now have at least ownership interest such that we can enter the building, do repairs, whatever we need to do to do upkeep.
And that's the church.
That's the church
The
itself.
church, because we already have ownership of the parsonage.
Does a controlling interest afford us certain rights to make decisions and override the minority owner?
I believe that it does, but that's what I want to do a little bit more research on to determine what happens if he objects to certain things.
Who's paying the taxes on this building now?
That's my question too.
No one has been now for a while.
There wouldn't be taxes on it as a church facility.
It's not a church, it's a vacant building at the time. It might be a structure of a church, but it's a vacant building that somebody's playing hardball
Yeah,
and not
well,
paying
it
taxes.
wasn't an issue that I pushed in the sense that we were trying to get them to donate the property to the town. It may be something we need to look into at this point.
In the future.
In the future. But that's where things stand. We have 5-6 interest in the building.
Do we know where the sixth heir is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So there has been contact made.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've had discussions with them.
And you're going to provide us with additional research on the church.
Well, yes. I know for a fact that we're permitted to enter the building
Okay.
and do maintenance, which I know was a big concern.
Well, the preservation of that building.
Right.
That's
And I think we're entitled to do whatever steps we need to do. We may even have the right to seek contribution from him for those steps, for his interest. But I'm going to look at specifically what we can and can't do in that regard.
I was just gonna say, if I was him, I'd let us go ahead and fix it up, and then I'd refuse to give it up. That way he's got his work done.
Yeah.
But, we got it. Huh?
We have the controlling ownership, so who wouldn't be able to do that, correct?
I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
we would be able to do what we need to do.
that would be most helpful, Dan, to know that.
Yeah.
That really would.
Right.
If you can bring that back to us at the next meeting.
I will.
Madam Mayor, on the second part, the discussion about the church parish house, I'm going to ask the board if they would consider a joint meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission on February 13th at 5 o'clock at the Parks and Rec building for a joint open discussion on the future of the parish house. Now that we've walked through it, we've seen what's in it, now it's time to have a joint meeting to discuss where do we go from here with the parish house. And I'm just asking the board to do that. And I think the age of that building, being the oldest building in this community, deserves that.
I had a couple of things. Being a liaison, I've been asked by the commission that in the meanwhile, in the short term, can we get, and I've spoken to Town Manager Adams about it, can we take some steps to preserve and stop further damage to the building? There's some shingles missing, either to get a tarp up there or to get the roof repaired. There was windows open. Can we get those sealed up? There's air conditioners where water can come through the side into the building, enter into the building. If we can just yank those air conditioners out of there for right now. I don't think we have any power to the building. Otherwise, I'd say having a dehumidifier or something of that nature in the building would be a good idea to dry up any mold issues so that it don't continue to grow, unless we get run power off some other source. Or it'd be a generator, but that would be a pain. If that's okay with the board.
I agree to the point that it needs some kind of climate control to help keep the temperature stabilized all the time, so that when it's dried out, it's dry and stays dry. Because the way it is now, it just goes up and down.
Would this be something we need to bring back the board as far as the cost of this before they make a decision on doing this? Because again, that would have to be funded, and that's not in our current budget.
Possibly, yeah.
I know with all those, it all needs to be done, but I think we need to know how much that's going to cost before you just say, go do it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
we just discussed on the bulkhead and all, and I think what we need to stop and think about, we're rushing into things, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and half the time we don't finish anything. we barely met budget last time, and a lot of the staff had to give up a lot of things in order for us to do that. To me, you need to look and say, well, do we want the bulkhead? Is that more important than the parsonage right now? We're gonna have to tighten up the strings for a little bit, I think.
I think the things I'm asking for, I could go down there and do it myself. I've had to. Talking about putting a tarp on the roof.
Okay, you can go.
I'll take care of it. Want me to? I got people.
My husband will help.
Yanking some air conditioners out of the windows, shutting the windows.
Yeah.
If there's no utilities, then I guess we can't do anything about dehumidification. I'm not talking about any big money.
Madam Mayor, back to my original request that we conduct a joint meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission on February 13th, 5 o'clock in the Parks and Rec building.
Does that work for staff as far as a special meeting on that day? Does that work for the commissioners?
Yes, for me.
Yes.
Is that good
Work for me, I can make it work most of the time.
So would you want to move that meeting into here?
We could move it over here.
Then you can, it could be you could, we'd
It's
have
up-
to do an
it's up to you all.
advertisement anyway that
Yeah.
we're gonna have a quorum present, so
Yeah.
you could actually do it in this building,
Let's just do it over here, Madam Mayor.
okay?
We got ample seating in here.
So would it be a special joint meeting with,
Okay.
Historic Preservation Commission, 5 p.m.
5
in this
o'clock.
building, okay?
On February the 13th.
February 13th, and then we'd be meeting again. That's gonna be a busy time coming
Yeah.
up.
The board, the commission, and staff, Mayor.
All right, and the board, commission, and staff.
Yeah.
So we need to vote on that.
Yes. So we have a motion that we're gonna hold a special joint meeting with Historic Preservation Commission along with our staff. And I guess we want, the staff that was a part of the tour, also the inspections department too, if that can work for the inspections department. Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed, and if you'll mark your calendars for February 13th. And also a reminder that you have a meeting on February the 11th also,
If I can find my
and that's
calendar.
at 5:30.
My
All right.
house is upside down
Yeah.
now.
Next, we have consideration discussion of budget amendment number 4 in the amount of $20,000 from the original museum funding and authorizing the town manager to execute contracts with Odom Roofing to change the asphalt shingles to metal roofing and with a design to build architecture to assist with the design features as well as the authority to make any minor substantive changes to the agreement. And that would be on the Trade Street house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because that's not mentioned in here.
Yes, Madam
So,
Mayor, sorry.
just need to make sure that's Trade Street location of the museum. Any questions or concerns in reference to that?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. I talked too much tonight. All right, reports and information. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm jumping one. Consideration discussion of the nominating committee's recommendations for various open seats. And I'll turn this over to the nominating committee, which is Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and Commissioner Legg.
Yeah, Commissioner Legg and I met, and we had a number of applicants, and as you can see, for appearance, we're nominating Marie Callender for the Historical Preservation Commission, Victor Lancaster, for Lake Advisory Commission, Susan Rossman, and for the Veterans Committee, you have application from Mr. Al Ferry, and we did receive an application from Miss Elizabeth Blevins as well for the Veterans Committee, but our nomination is for Mr. Al Ferry. But it's the pleasure of the board.
Any conversation?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
the nominating committee is recommending Al Ferry for the Veterans Affairs Commission, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
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 And if that slate is fine with y'all, we just need a motion or.
Motion to approve?
Okay, I have a motion to approve. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Next, we have our manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Repairs to the Lake Concession Stand, Brower Park, Big T's, and Herring Park roofing. The projected start date by Odom Roofing for the repairs is Wednesday, February the 2nd. Rockfish Road sidewalk, McGill Engineering and NCDOT field changes are approved. McGill Engineering finalized and sealed the changes, and they have been sent to the contractor for review and scheduling. The new museum location, staff continues to work on the building as time allows, and Odom Roofing has been contacted to give a quote on the metal roofing replacement, date to be determined, and you all just approved that. Fountain Lane House hazardous material report came back and shows exterior asbestos and lead-based paint. Staff is working on a contractor to mitigate the hazards prior to demolition. The proposed Gary Dove Memorial Building, the new sign has been installed and covered up for the unveiling. The proposed unveiling could possibly be Spring Sports Opening Day, which is Saturday, April the 13th, and this will be determined by the Youth Association. The family will be sent special invitations. The last day for Hurricane Florence storm-related pickup is Wednesday, January 23rd, tomorrow. The Latter-day Saints Youth Group has contacted Public Works about a community service project at the Adcock Cemetery. They are looking at a Saturday in April to clean the tombstones. That date to be determined. We respectfully request that you send your budget retreat items to us by this Friday, January the 25th, if you've not already done so. I emailed Troy Baker with NCDOT regarding the driveway permit for the old golf course property. Public Works Director Don Cisco and I have a meeting with him on Tuesday, January the 29th, to discuss the driveway permit application.
Town Manager Adams, can I stop you a second?
Yes.
On the budget workshop, the items we weren't able to fund last year, are we going to roll them into this workshop, perhaps? Like the security, the badge system kind of thing that was proposed?
We can.
Could that
If
just
that's
be done?
if that's the board's wishes.
Items
yes,
that we wanted
can.
last year but weren't able to fund.
Weren't able
Can
to
we just
fund.
go ahead and get those? Is that okay with y'all?
Yeah.
We agreed that we wanted them last
We can
year.
take a look at them.
And let's
yeah.
have another discussion on that.
Okay.
Anything that might have,
Some of those were on my list.
were not,
Yeah.
were short, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's
but I
okay.
needed to
Let-
interject.
Write my note down. Okay. All right. So I've left off with the meeting with DOT with Mr. Baker regarding the driveway permit for the golf course property, the former golf course property. The meeting with representatives of NCDOT, Cumberland County Schools, and town staff is scheduled for Friday, January the 25th to discuss the flooding issue around C. Wayne Collier Elementary School on Rockfish Road, Summer Drive, and Deaver Circle. The town website redesign. As part of our contract with Civic Plus, the process of a complete website redesign began in July 2018 at no cost to the town. Members of town staff, including those responsible for updating the website, collaborated with Civic Plus to ensure that their vision came to life. The new website will feature a more modern, user-friendly appearance and allow for residents and job seekers to submit forms directly to town staff. The newly designed website is set to launch to the public at 3 p.m. on Thursday, February the 14th. And it looks really good. I've seen a preview of it, so it looks really nice. And we've got some better pictures and a little more graphic, things to make it a little more interesting, and it's definitely going to be more user-friendly. And then finally, I'll just read the press release that was released last week concerning the opening of the Parks and Rec Center. The Hope Mills Parks and Rec Center reopened today, January the 22nd, under limited operations at regular hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9, Saturday, 8 to 5, and closed on Sunday. Telephone lines are still down until further notice. There is a cell phone number, which is 910-426-4109 to reach the department. The after-school program will relocate back to this rec center today, which they did, and they were thrilled with the new aesthetic of their room. Spring sports registration will be accepted at the Recreation Center beginning today. The senior 55 plus programs will resume on Monday, February the 4th. Pickleball will resume play in the gymnasium on Thursday, January the 24th. The fitness room, or the exercise room, will remain closed until further notice. And rental reservations will resume on Monday, February the 4th. And that is all that I have for my manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, we have a lot of reminders, and of course, one of those, all these are committee meetings. They're coming up January 24th, the Veterans Affairs at 7 p.m. They'll be moving back to Recreation Center. January 28th to 6:30, Parks and Rec Committee will be meeting at the Rec Center. February 4th at 6 p.m., the Festival Committee will meet in the front meeting room. February 4th at 7 p.m., the Board of Commissioners are our regular meeting. February the 11th, Chamber of Commerce has a regular luncheon. February the 11th at 5:30, we'll have our special meeting here in the Luther Boardroom.
And that, I'm sorry, Madam
Okay.
Mayor, that's at 5:30, not 7.
Okay, 5:30.
I think, yeah, there was a typo in there.
And she's got it right on this one.
Okay.
She's corrected it.
Okay, thank you.
And then the February, we're also on the February 13th, there'll be a joint special meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission. Staff comments?
Madam Mayor, quickly, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The Parents Committee doesn't have a meeting in here? I thought my paperwork said we had a January 20-something meeting.
The Appearance Committee met this evening at the Rec Center,
Yeah, they met this evening.
and that may be my fault because you asked me about meetings this afternoon when we spoke on the phone, and I didn't think of that one
Okay.
when you
thanks.
asked me what was.
I was gonna say, I've got a list in my computer desk if I can find my stuff out of that desk. But I'll research it and check it out. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any staff comments? Ms. Starling?
No,
Ms.
ma'am.
Adams? No. Okay. Official comments, I'll start this evening with Commissioner Legg.
I just thank everyone for coming out this evening, the scout group. I just hope that we can move along and get some of these things funded and not let some of the things be forgotten that we should try to catch up with. It's been on the burner for a long time. I'd like to thank the town staff for all their hard work. I'll just get on out of here. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Larson?
I just wanted to let, Melissa, I wanted to let you know, Ms. Adams, that I have contacted most of the people that were at the flooding meeting, except for the Vendettis.
We emailed them.
You did?
Yes,
Okay.
we emailed them when we
there was
set
like
the meeting up.
maybe 2 or 3 couples that I didn't know, but I just told the people, everyone that lived on Sturbridge and Deaver and Summer, that if they passed it on, that once we get information back, we'll either send out some information or we'll have another meeting for them to come to. We just
Right.
didn't know at this point.
Right.
And I want to thank Jane for working with me on that today, because I did spend about 3 hours pulling that stuff and reviewing all that stuff, and my sole purpose wasn't to overstep on anybody's feet, but to not spend 3 hours tonight on it, answering questions and just trying to make it more easy for the board. So I appreciate you doing that with me.
You're welcome.
Okay. Commissioner Bellflowers?
I have a question.
Okay.
It's a stormwater question. Earlier on the consent agenda, we approved stormwater maintenance. My question is, one of the streets, is it Lillian Street, one of the streets that's going to be looked at first? The reason why is because there's a neighbor that has called me several times about some stormwater issues. So I wanted to make sure that his address was one of the very first addresses with the stormwater cleaning maintenance plan. So I guess that would be a question for Beth. It is. Thank you.
Lillian?
Lillian. I just wanted to make sure that on the record, Lillian was one of the very first streets with the maintenance plan. Other than that, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I have one thing to say, and I'm not going to say anything else. Melissa,
Yes, ma'am.
we enjoyed going through we hope the future museum. And there's a lot of things that was discussed by one of your staff and things that could be done more historical, make it look more like an older home and all. Is it up to the board to give direction or which way to go? Just let them go ahead and do what they want to do?
I think that's the Historical Preservation
Yeah,
Commission.
we've been trying to get a little more guidance from them
Yes,
as far
I
as
bet.
what they want.
But you haven't
So
gotten any yet, though, have you?
what we've gotten some limited. I know that they're interested in getting some displays in there, and but as far as making the building look, period piece, I'm not sure that they've really provided a whole lot of feedback on that. I think they're wanting to see something happening though. So
We did do a
we're-
walkthrough, and
we're trying to get that
We
moving.
haven't given them
Specifically-
any guidance as to what to do inside,
gosh, that
though.
was 6 months ago. 6 months ago, we did a walkthrough, and we gave the to-do list to the board, so I don't know,
What
is there a
to-
disconnect or something?
I didn't, where's the to-do list?
This was probably, end of the summer. And I brought the to-do, and Chancellor had it as well in the minutes. We brought the to-do list back, what we needed to get the museum up and running.
Well, Pat, that'll probably be part of our discussion during our joint meeting on February 13th.
Yeah, I think anything that's still got questions about can be asked then.
We'll talk about all of it.
Museum too?
The
Okay.
church, parish house, and Trade Street. We'll talk about all three. In fact, I think we should talk about all three. They're all connected. They're all from one commission. That's fine with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to find out what's going on.
Yeah, sure.
That's all.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
I just had a quick question on, to Dan for the investigation, not trying to pry, just trying to figure out if all the parties involved have been interviewed at least once, do you know?
Not yet. There are some additional interviews scheduled.
Okay. And just to be clear, we're the ones being interviewed, we're not interviewing the investigator,
That's correct.
as was Ms. Cooper's concern earlier, I guess, if I heard it right. So, okay, that's all.
Okay. I, again, wanted to let you know that the mayor's youth leadership group that met this evening, their purpose is to help us, and we're working very closely with Mr. McLaughlin. This year, their purpose is to research and learn more about historical properties that are not included in the historical district. And they're also looking at the properties in the historical district to find out more about them. And the reason for doing this is a lot of our youth do not know about the history of Hope Mills. For an example, tonight we asked them where was Hope Mills Hospital. And of the young men and women here, not the first one even knew we ever had a hospital. We asked them where Hope Mills #1 was, and they asked what was #1, and I said, Hope Mills Mill #1, do you know where that is? And amazing is, they did not. So the leaders of our school that are now members of this mayor's youth leadership, their goal is to provide not only information to the board, but also to work hand in hand, hopefully, with Historical Commission, which I would like to ask Historical Commission to potentially send someone to their meeting so that that way they can give them some updates on information. And they're particularly interested in what it is that's going to go in the museum. But anyway, that's their purpose, and they're going to provide at the end, we'll have some type of pamphlet or brochure or something that will be representative of this year's work. Like last year, their product at the end was information about the multimodal congestion plan and also the comprehensive parks plan. If you note, they made a presentation to the board as far as their recommendations. So that's where we're heading with this particular group. Also, I want to let you know that the Boy Scouts in Hope Mills, the numbers are growing, and so that hopefully we will see more of the young men and women coming to our board meetings, and just have to beg your indulgence on times because they do like sitting in our seats and seeing what it feels like to be up here.
We've got a nice group tonight.
Yeah, it's a good group tonight, and they were here a little before 6, so they did stay for part of the meeting, but we knew it was school night, they'd have to leave. And with that, that's all I have. I thank everyone for your
Motion to
attendance.
adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
See you soon.
Duke's got a red pit.
All right.